So welcome Mike Manrod to another edition of the Secure Dynamics TechCast.
Well, thank you, Ashwin. Great to be here again. Great to see you.
Yeah, and thanks for joining me on a Friday afternoon. That speaks a lot.
Of course. Yeah, it's TGIF, right?
I know. It's like, though these days, weekdays, weekends are all like blur, right? Okay. So the topic is really about, I know you as the head of GCE and part of the larger higher education community, is if, let's say I were a 22-year-old, I can dream on, right? Coming into the workplace today, and I wanted to build a career in cybersecurity. What are the skills that you would advise me to be both technical and non-technical, right? And then if I were to kind of take the time machine back 10 years and I would approach you, let's say the beginning of 2010, and what has changed in terms of what skills were needed then versus now, and why?
The sophistication of the attack and defense methodologies have changed. And wow, we've seen the explosion of the product offerings. We went from a very limited subset of ways you could, tools you could use or colors you could paint with when painting a cybersecurity mural 10 years ago to now. It's overwhelming. There's thousands of choices, and it's sometimes even a challenge to make a selection. But some core things remain the same. It's valuable to have a foundation on how attack and defense fundamentally works. How people compromise information systems and many time, whether they're attacking systems or people, as well as how defense works at a fundamental level. But from there, you move into tools and tactics, and some of it comes down to carving out where you want your career to go. Do you want to be in architecture and engineering? Do you want to be in SOC and eventually work into incident response and threat hunting? Or are you more interested in the business track of compliance and risk management on up to potentially leadership? And then of course the favorite topic of everybody who watches Mr. Robot, the vulnerability management leading into pen testing and ultimately security research and thought leadership. So as we look across these, there's different skill sets depending on which path you choose.
So, Mike, again, and sometimes you get into one, and I was talking to a friend of mine at Verizon the other day, and she was talking about how, as an institution, they actually actively promote cross-pollination. Right, so they have a program where they actually go into these various groups. So, and again, as a brand newbie coming out, I mean, I have no idea what an incident responder does versus what a SOC analyst does versus a security admin does. So, are you seeing the need, or are you seeing forward-looking enterprises who are actually thriving and being able to put this program in place so that you actually, by the time you, let's say spend 3 years in a company, you've actually gotten a good feel of what you're good at and whether you want to be staring at a screen versus doing pen testing versus doing other things?
Yeah, I think you're right on the money there. I think internships that rotate people through, or orientation programs that rotate people through different areas are super valuable. And I think they're valuable at a couple junctures. One, in technology in general, because at the beginning, I think everybody finds themselves with a diffuse interest in IT. Like, hey, I love technology, but I don't really know how it all works or what I want to do. So that's where you rotate through to understand the difference between telecom versus being a sysadmin versus a developer or DevSecOps or security. And then I think there's a second one of, once you pick one of those specializations, rotating through within that specialization to understand what's within it. And then I feel within teams, there's this maturing of, for a little while in security, you really do need to specialize because it's so broad.
Yep.
Of, okay, you've got people through, you figure out this new person wants to focus and specialize. All right, you're going to start in SOC, you're going to start in GRC. Okay, we're going to apprentice you running vulnerability scans, because it's way too much to learn it all at once. But by the same token, once you hit the other side of that maturity arc, those silos need to break down as people advance. because when you're in an incident, you need a pen tester in that incident to understand the dynamic boots on ground of how somebody is attacking and how to adapt your response. And likewise, when you're doing risk prioritization, there needs to be a deep understanding of how things are exploited, and asset management, and data governance then moves into the technical realm. Same with vulnerability management. So I feel like it almost goes full circle as you work your way through.
So Mike, last question, and this is something that I know it's close to your heart and my heart, which is really mentorship, right? And as these youngsters and other people who are coming into the workspace for the first time, as they move up the ranks, like you said, there's different sets of skills that are required and needed, and soft as well as technical skills. So at what point have you seen, or what sorts of colleagues of yours, I know you do this all the time, but is there an awareness? So if I've kind of come through the SOC analyst and I've risen through a GM, that's the lens that I'm going to look at the world. How does somebody in management actually broaden his or her viewpoint so that they are more inclusive and allow for cross-pollination breeding, if you will?
There's a few different ways to go about that. One way is having joint cross-functional meetings where people actually talk about what they're doing, and actually like literally cross-pollinating people. When you have an incident bridge due to a cyber attack that you're thwarting, bring in your GRC person so that they can see the technical in action. And then likewise, when you're prioritizing risks, bring in your SOC person to look and say, hey, look, that's high, and here's why, because I just saw that attacked a bunch of times, but this other thing you have medium, you should drop to a low, because nobody's ever gone after that in the 3 years I've been doing this. The other thing that I think the world's moving to, though, especially if people want to get excellence across cyber, is a full stack mentality. So one thing we've started within Grand Canyon is, we started it, obviously, GCU started it with the CCOE and, the wonderful cyber range there. But we've also, even been expanding it more loosely than that to Home Lab Club, we're kind of calling it, where, actually building up an infrastructure as a practitioner. You can go on eBay and get hardware cheap that's old that you'd never use in prod. You can set up virtualization platforms. You can build out the environment. You can attack it. You can defend it, configure the controls, try to exploit vulnerabilities, known vulnerable systems. And as I've been kind of walking people through that pathway, what I'm finding is the people who come out have a very assimilated knowledge, and even an appreciation and a respect of other areas of IT that they're working with.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, I mean, I was thinking through my whole first encounter with the Raspberry Pi, and it kind of it gives you, right. I mean, it gives you a clear understanding of what it is to kind of set up networking and debugging, and you kind of broaden your expertise and your empathy for others, for sure. So, Mike, always great chatting with you again. Thank you for joining me on a Friday afternoon, and good luck.
Likewise, thank you, Ashwin. Have a great day.
You too.